Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the Hopenning, the place where hope is happening. And this is episode number 55, and we are extremely happy to have you here. My beautiful friend Fran is my co host. Fran is a 50, no, she's a 35, 34, 34, 34-year veteran teacher in Northern Alberta, Canada, and she does rapid transformational therapy part time. I'm a full time rapid transformational therapy practitioner and a clinical hypnotherapist. And I am in Calgary, Alberta right now. So we are extremely happy to have you here with us tonight. And we trust that we bring hope to you. And today we are very privileged to have a fantastic guest who is helping to spread hope. Fran, you have the honors.
And it is an honor. Mytrae Meliana comes to us with so much background in healing. She's a woman's empowerment and spiritual teacher, holistic psychotherapist, trauma specialist, speaker, author, and channel. She leads workshops and programs for women, empowering them to heal from trauma, free themselves from patriarchy, and evolve to their divine selves so they live authentic, bold, and inspired lives. She is also the founder of Temple of Sound Healing. So exciting to hear about this, which teaches sound healing to health, wellness practitioners, and organization. She is also an immigrant from India, and she will share her personal journey in her, which was also shared in her award-winning book called Brown Skin Girl, an Indian American woman's magical journey from broken to beautiful. And so it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. It is tonight here in Northern Canada. You come to us from Oregon in the United States, but you weren't always there. And that's part of the beauty, I guess, broken to beautiful of your own journey to healing. And you do so much now. I know that we're only going to be able to touch on a part of it in this call, but it's truly beautiful work that you do. So welcome, Mytrae.
Thank you so much, Fran and Marina. It's really a pleasure to meet you and be with you both. Thank you for having
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm. So your book, Brown Skin Girl, that's where I first heard of you. Actually, was your book, and it's had a lot of accolades. There's been a lot of awards. It's been awarded, but it is a journey. It was a real journey of trauma and breakthrough. Really, can you tell us a little bit about your history? What happened? What happened, and how did you end up where you are right now?
Yeah, well, it's a long journey, as journeys, all our journeys are. I grew up in India, and my family moved to the U.S. when I was 16. A very impressionable age, as you can imagine, and you know, but after a while, of course, getting used to it and loving it. And for me, freedom was the most tantalizing, heady thing that I wanted from my American experience. I didn't have the freedoms I had in India. And so I just went for it and was creating my own life. My parents, on the other hand, had a very different expectations for me. They wanted me to have an arranged marriage, and it was unspoken but expected. And as my family, and probably a lot of families at that time at least, they didn't really talk about things, but it was just sort of expected. And women have very different rights than daughters have very different rights than sons, as far as careers go, as far as marriage goes. So there's all of that at that time. And when they found out I had a boyfriend, I was in graduate school, I was financially independent. It was kind of an overnight thing. They had a family intervention where two aunts flew in from different parts of the country, and there was this pressurized experience. And they essentially said I was not returning to school. I happened to be visiting them over the summer holidays. And they said it was not going to go back and to take a break for a semester and go to India. And if after 3 months I still wanted to be with my boyfriend of a year and a half, then they would allow it. And it all happened so quickly. And so now I know that I froze. And I was filled with shame because the question that sort of came at me was, have you had sex with him? And for me, we had never talked about sex. It was just, you don't talk about it. Somehow people magically appear in the world. And but I froze. And, there's just a lot of, at least in my family, a lot of expectation to obey. And I was, beaten as a child and even as a teenager. So there was very much the threat and the that would happen. And so I was terrified and torn, as you can imagine. I remember sitting in my room, should I just jump out the window and go? But I was just so frozen. I felt numb, and and internally there's a tremendous loyalty. So I had often wished, as I in my years in the U.S., that my parents would sort of embrace who I was becoming, but they very much wanted me to be an Indian daughter. And so I think they were conflicted too, as I was. And the next morning, my mother and I were on a flight back to India. And once there, they said I was never returning. And it has been the hardest experience of my life. I've had other hard experiences, but that has been the hardest. Because music was my life. Music was my soul. Even more than my boyfriend, music was who I was and how I expressed myself. So they essentially imprisoned me for a year in my grandparents' home. It was a small 4-room cottage. I wasn't allowed to go out, no phone, no mail. There was no internet at the time. And connection with everybody else was shut off. With friends, letters came, but they were never delivered. There was a guard outside. And, my grandparents being of their generation, it was even unthinkable to have any kind of conversation around sex with them. And I was filled with shame. That was the other piece. So there was the shame of that experience, as well as I had been sexually abused as a child. So I think my response to the whole situation was like a child. I just couldn't speak about it. And of course, now I know, had I spoken, there would have at least been conversation and, not this expectation of how dare I give up my virginity when I was really never a virgin from the time I was 6, but in a child's mind, and it was all just garbled, and I hadn't really had therapy. I wasn't equipped to speak about it. So I didn't speak, and I really withdrew into myself. And after, I think, about a couple of months, my mother took me to a Swami to purify me, she said. And so he asked me to travel with him for 6 weeks, and then proceeded to, he was a world famous Swami, and I didn't know anything about religion. I was just in love with my music and freedom. That's all I wanted to do. And he was very, very emotionally abusive, with a lot of public humiliation and shaming, and even an experience of molestation. And that, I think, twisted something in my mind. I was so terrified, sexuality then just became this thing I just clamped down on. And it was in the eyes of God. I mean, that was just this barrage of religious, material and treatment that I was somehow really a shameful person. So it was really very, very traumatizing. And because it was so extended, and coming from my own family, so there's the people you look to for safety and protection, when they become your very violators, there's no place to go. The life force just so there's this progressive shutting down and closing in, and not having anybody to talk to, for a year. And I was let out after a couple of years. And meanwhile, my mother's trying to get me married. And fortunately, my grandmother said, just lay off. That's, she's not there. But after a year, people spoke to my mother, and she agreed to let me out of the house. So I, did some few little classes, and eventually found my way to learning software, which became like a way to get out, just a job and financial freedom. That's what I want. I wanted financial freedom to somehow make my way away from my family and be financially independent. Because they had my passport, they had taken everything. And so there's no point in running away in India, because without a single woman at 22, she's just going to be without money. She's, rape would be, and God knows what else would have been my future. So I was just closed in. And so eventually found my way out, but to the US after a total of 3 years. But I was deeply traumatized, as you can imagine, and very, very numb. And to me, I didn't know what was happening, because one of the first things I did was to go back to graduate school and try and play the piano. And to my horror, I couldn't feel. It was a horrible experience. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why. I could play with my fingers, could play, but I could not feel inside. And I knew something was horribly wrong, and I didn't know how to find my way back to myself. So after that, it was, a lot of stumbling around, because I wasn't familiar with therapy. It wasn't part of my culture. I had the stigma of therapy, that it's, or my understanding of it was, you have to be quote unquote crazy. And of course, now I know there's no such thing. But that was my impression of it. And so I ended up marrying a man, an Indian man, who it felt, now looking back, it was just a place to be safe from my family. It wasn't much of a relationship. It was a semi-safe place. But it was, at least it brought me some refuge from them. And I took that, because I felt I knew inside, I couldn't stand on my own feet at that point. So that was a long 15-year experience, and all the while living with something is so wrong, and not knowing how to return to myself. I felt like the Walking Dead. That's how I would describe it. I was functional. I had a job. I could function, but inside I had a hole, and I just didn't know how to heal, until the fortunate experience of actual physical abuse from my husband. And that just woke me up, and I began having these dreams, and I think I had been sort of calling, my soul had been calling out, like, what is this? I'm so miserable. What is happening? And I started having all these dreams showing me who he was. And suddenly people from my music past just wrote to me out of the blue. So it became this thing of synchronicities. I went to a meditation retreat, and I think I was just so deeply searching, and nature started speaking to me, as it had when I was a child. And that was my medicine. That was what I held on to. And so it was just following and searching, and then reading books about sexual abuse, where I realized my whole life I'd lived thinking that I was bad in some fundamental way. And they were lifesavers, because then it made me understand that there is such a thing, and I'm not, bad. I was still thinking about it as a 6-year-old would. I didn't have a way to hold it. So that yeah, once something kind of, I woke up. I think I sort of went to sleep for all those years, and then I woke up, as one of my therapists said, and um, then just knew I had to leave the marriage, and I didn't know what I would do. But on a walk one day, it's just like, okay, I'll become a therapist. I've never been in therapy. It's quite a leap, but yeah, I left and I went to graduate school, and of course got into therapy, and it's just been a life-changing journey since. Healing, learning different forms of healing, and um, having the privilege to heal, because I know so many don't, and I truly feel privileged to have had the time and sort of jumped into the swimming pool full in. Um, and it's taken me a long time, and I've had phenomenal help, both in human form as friends, and from the natural world, and in spirit form. So I'm profoundly grateful to all the beings who've helped me. And with that, I will say that your podcast or show is on hope. And I think that when we call out for help, whether it's at the end of our rope, or whether when we're, it's at the darkest of nights, when we call out, we are heard. And now I know that we have to call. I think a lot of us keep waiting for help, but when I called, the response was like this. So that's one thing I would love for people to know.
It's amazing. An amazing story. The journey did not end for you there. So I know that you have so much more to your story, and people should buy your book, absolutely. But tell us a little bit more. What evolved for you? What brought you to where you are today?
Being in graduate school to be a therapist was profoundly healing, right? It was a very experiential school, so it was not just mind study. We were actively doing the work ourselves with each other. So that was learning so much about psychology. It helped me understand, the mental illness in my family, the dysfunction in my family, what role I played in my family, and of course the whole cultural piece. And it just gave me a place to hold experiences and to begin to speak and process emotionally. So I hadn't had that language before, and it was a huge education for me personally, which then of course I could take into as in my work with clients. So I became a therapist, and very quickly, I wasn't even licensed. I suddenly got Lyme disease out of the blue with really difficult symptoms, and I did my work, and I just knew. I put myself through a process, and I knew that Lyme was a symptom of something deeper. And when I put myself through the process, I realized it was my being disempowered as a woman, for me uniquely. And I think each one of us, it's a different symptom. So I went to a spiritual healing center in Brazil that I'd heard about, and I had no idea what to expect. I just bought a ticket and went. I'd heard amazing stories, but I knew I needed help beyond whatever the medication I was receiving. And that was my introduction to an initiation to the spirit world, and how spirits heal. And it's not something, well, it's getting more and more now in the West, but it's a very accepted form of healing in places like Brazil. And it was an extraordinary experience, and one that I returned to for, I think, about 8 or 9 years after that, going twice a year for the first 3 years for myself, and then I started taking groups there. And, spirits lifting off things, like clearing past lives and showing me what they were clearing, and giving me such deep healings, but with the profoundest and most exalted love. which really was the healing. Um, when you're held in the arms of the Divine Mother, there are no words. There's only all that we've longed for, and receiving that, which I think and would want for every human being. Yeah. So
And
go ahead.
I think that spirituality, you know, I think about the different traditions. Were you Hindi? Hindu?
Hindu. Mm-hmm.
Hindu.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in Christianity, we, to an extent, in Christianity, we look at the spirit, not spirit world so much, but more the saints. The saints can pray for us and intervene for us and stuff. And there's just so much depth in there. Like, we can look at that and go, gee, that's a little hokey. How does that even work? And yet, like you're saying, the spirit world intervenes. And I know that it does. I am Christian and Catholic, and yet I know it does. And it's quite profound, actually, really. And I don't know if that's part of the Hindu tradition as well. The spirit world.
It was very different. I mean, I grew up, I'm from India, Hindu, and I grew up with gods and goddesses and the whole pantheon. And my family wasn't particularly religious. They did a daily worship, a puja every day, but it wasn't a personal connection as much. I think certain people had it, but not everybody. But not for healing, and it was more, let's pray for health. I guess that's healing. Let's pray for, the crops this year. Let's pray for our business, that kind of a thing. But I hadn't lived there long enough to develop my faith in that way. So my faith was really my music. That's to me, that was the most sacred thing that I experienced, and Mother Earth. That to me, that connection with nature, a very living, alive relationship. That was my spirituality. But I'd experienced through nature actually as a child, and when I was breaking away from my marriage, I had conversations with nature. To me, that was very, very private, not something I've obviously talked about, but I knew they were alive, coming from India, that everything is alive and everything is a being and has a sentience and a consciousness and a wisdom. And even before I knew the philosophy of it, I had conversations with the elementals. And so I had a very magical childhood. So that was very ordinary and comfortable for me. But in Brazil, it was a center that was where it was not just understood or expected, but the presence, the very profound, enormous, and very, very high presence of thousands of spiritual beings who were there precisely to heal the people who came there. And there was a process, there was a procedure, and the main thing was you had to ask for help. So that's when I learned about the importance of asking. I think a lot of us just go, why doesn't God do anything? But I learned how to develop a relationship. We all have spirit guides, right? But and the beings there, I was told, so it's a spiritist tradition, which is very prevalent in Brazil. In Brazil, it's really a wonderful setup. They have hospitals, mental health centers, and spiritual centers working together. So it's to me, I have not seen a more perfect understanding of healing, where body, mind, and spirit, people are working together, and there's a consultation that happens. So the person is not just treated one way, they're treated on all levels, and there's an understanding complete understanding, but healing will happen on all levels. So I love that. And in this place, we were shown how to ask. It was very simple. You just make a request from your heart, like, what do you want? It's that simple, but that is our work. And that we were, as humans, we were to do 50% of the work. It wasn't just you ask it, okay, it's just given. It's not a wave of the magic wand. No, it is, how does your lifestyle need to change? Let's look at your relationships. What past wounds do you want to heal? What is your heart close to, right? Who is there need to forgive? So there are the work that we need to do, but there's a profound inflow of help on levels that I have not experienced anywhere else, other than certain magical spots in the world. Yeah.
That is such an amazing experience. Makes me almost want to go to Brazil. Tell me about the Temple of Sound Healing.
Yeah, so when I was there, one of the first messages I received was they told me that part of my work was to work with sound. And that I couldn't make sense of it. I was a pianist, and I knew the world of music, but I didn't know that sound could be for healing, but they kept telling me and showing me. So I began to explore sound, first on myself. I bought a crystal singing bowl and used it for myself. And I was blown away by how I felt. It's just I played it every day for a few months, and it just, the peace, the resonance, the vibrations, the stillness I would just drop into was profound. So I started using it with clients, and again, and especially clients with serious trauma where, the nervous system is so jangled, and trust and fear there's so much of it. Sound was this way that they just became the whole physical body, emotional body. There was a cohesiveness that just happened in a very safe way, without words. And as I knew them, and in a minute or two, there would just be the settling when someone would be really agitated, and it takes, with words, takes so much work to get them to not even that close a place. So I very quickly realized how powerful it was. And so I took a training, and learned all I could about sound, and just started bringing sound in. And it was extraordinarily powerful. People would heal very quickly, along with my work was now including spiritual. So shifts happened really fast. I realized that healing was way beyond psychology. It's just, there's so much more that can happen, and so much quicker, and on such deeper levels. So the work just changed. And yeah, so then I started, again, it's all guided. Again, the guides keep giving me messages of what my work is. So they asked was to start teaching, so I created a couple of courses to teach people how to use the bowls for themselves, and also to teach health and wellness practitioners how to incorporate sound into their own work with their clients.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I mean, I would love to. You say that, I think about why, like I'm always thinking about the mechanics of it. What is it about the sound bowl? It must be the vibrations. Am I right?
Exactly.
So the vibrations are there different sizes of bowls okay, right.
Different
Can you just
sizes of
explain a
bowls.
little bit? I mean, I think I saw some when I was in Nepal.
I have a Nepalese one right behind my shoulder here.
Okay, so
yeah.
when I was in Nepal, there were different kinds of bowls you could buy. I mean, I knew nothing about them, but it sounds fascinating. Can you just explain it a little bit so I can wrap my head around it?
Sure, and then I can also grab one. And but let me begin by, it is vibration. So we are all energy. And before I heard about it, I was like, yeah, it seems abstract, right? But we are vibration. When we think we're solid, we feel solid, but we're really vibrations and frequencies and colors. I mean, and there's this whole field of vibrational medicine. Homeopathy is vibrational. So, and this sound is something that all traditions have used from centuries. It's a centuries old healing. It goes back as far as Egypt and Lemuria and Atlantis. Sound is one of the primary modes of healing, which now the world is waking up to and realizing, which is so great. So there are two laws. There's the law of vibration, and then there's the law of resonance and the law of entrainment. So the law of resonance is that when two things can vibrate, there's a vibration that speaks. So right now you're resonating with my voice. And the law of entrainment is that when one entity or being is vibrating at one frequency, they will both entrain. They will come into a sympathetic vibration based on one, whichever is, for instance, if there's a tuning fork and you hold another tuning fork, the one that's just being held steady will start vibrating at the one that's vibrating. So it also just speaks to how we affect each other, right? If somebody's in chaos and anxious, another person who's just sort of walked in the room will also start getting anxious. We've all experienced that. Or if somebody's calm, then if somebody walks into the room, they feel a sense of calm. We all do that. We all do that for each other, right? And music does that for us, right? I mean, music makes us sad, makes us cry, makes us joyful, makes us dance, makes us, all of that. So, and it works on our nervous system. Our whole body hears sound, not just our ears. So our entire body receives the vibrations. And unlike psychology, our body processes. So it removes the impetus that we put on we need to heal, which often I think people trip into and becomes part of the problem. Whereas sound just provides the environment and the modality where the consciousness of the entire being, the body, the energy system, the soul, mind, body, heart, spirit, as a whole receives the healing vibrations, obviously not car horns, and knows what to do with it. Our cells understand vibration. It's not like we have to, change that limiting belief. We don't have to do that. Our bodies naturally just shift and know what to do with the sound.
So I'm a musician as well. I'm a singer. And there was a period in my life that I stopped. And exactly like with you, when you couldn't play piano for a while, and you went back, and this really spoke to me. You went back and you could still technically play, but your heart couldn't play. So to me, that just sums it up, what music is to me as well. And just the opening up, that vibration that you can feel. And sometimes when I meditate, I just put music on. That speaks to me because it immediately takes me into that vibration. So I really appreciate your explanation of this. It's amazing.
And the way that you explain that the whole body takes it in, it's got to be, though. It really does, because there's so much, it's not just the electrical energy within our body. There's the water, the amount of water there is, and it doesn't take much to get water moving, right? For the water to begin to, even all it takes is one little rock or a little leaf, and it'll make ripples in the water. So yeah, the mechanics of it all, the physiology of it all makes sense. Even it just makes sense, right? But we're so not in the Western world. It's changing now, but we never look at that whole system, the whole system of the body from top to bottom, and even the aura around us, right? The energy around us. We're just not taught to think that way. But it's a relief. it feels so good. I guess I can say it feels so good being able to talk openly about that. And just that there's change in the wind, right? There is change. We're starting to vibrate differently, I guess we could say, about accepting just different. Let's do something different, because obviously, with the amount of just rates of debilitating illness, there's got to be a change.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah.
Have you seen any types of healing, the physical healing, as a result of the work you do with the sound? Can you explain a little bit, tell us a little bit about what you have seen?
So one thing what happens with sound is the person, it alters it shifts the brain state. So it usually will take people into a deeper brain state from delta to, into delta states, where it's a deeper state, or theta states. And when they're there, there's this deep rest that they drop into. And that rest is profoundly healing, because it's a state of homeostasis. And when you hit that, when you arrive in that state, it's such a relief and a nourishment for the cells. Just as sound is. Sound, the frequencies are actually food for the nourishing the cells. I mean, we know this when you go and walk by a stream with the lapping water or the ocean. We just naturally exhale, right? What's that? That's our bodies are reaching a sense of a state of peace. So the same thing happens with sound and the frequencies. So in that state, in these deeper states, and with different frequencies, the body knows what to do. And that's what I love about sound. It completely eliminates so much of what psychology is about, because I think that there's so many forms of psychology. I mean, I'm not dissing. I think there's a profound use for psychology, but I think sound takes it to a whole other dimension, where the person is working on their consciousness on every level, and they don't have to do it with their mind, or think they have to do it with their mind. That their being knows what to do with healing sound. And so in these deep shifts, with the deep relaxation, as the cells are nourished, as they receive the frequencies they need, oftentimes people might receive emotional insights, or just insights, or intuitions, about maybe changes they may need to make in their life, or messages. And it becomes almost like a portal, where the connection with spirit, even their own soul, all of that comes into alignment. So, and when that alignment is there, that's what we want, that's what's wholeness. And as the being comes together, that's who we are. We're not meant to be going in different directions as most of us live our lives. It's kind of this cacophony that we're in, right? It's a discord. But when we come into a harmony with ourselves, there is the sense of, oh, this is me. And they drop into deeper cells of their me-ness, and they get these insights. There's a peace that they can connect with. They connect with themselves on deeper levels. There's an integration that happens. And on a physical healing level, there's also a detox. The emotions, stuck emotional energy, can move through and out very quickly, without the big waves that, it's not at all a cathartic, that you can have a few tears and so much can just leave the body. And that's another very, very powerful thing about sound. And not only the physical body, but even from the emotional and energy body, and even past lives. So it's working on many, many levels. And whatever is stuck or blocked or disharmonious can be released with or without their knowing. And that's the beauty of it, you know, and it relieves the person of having to know, which I think so much people can get caught up in. And as obviously now, as that emotional system changes, the cells also, as they're nourished, the frequencies can heal. And beyond that, you know, beyond the sound baths, there are very particular treatments that were developed some decades ago and are now being brought back to realize, to understand the frequencies of certain diseases, such as cancer or Lyme or what, you know, different diseases. And when those particular vibrations or frequencies are fed, what happens is that the cancer cells or the disease cells break up, disintegrate, and then, you know, the whole disease can kind of, it changes without damaging the rest of the body, and that's the beauty of it. So there was a lot of work done some years ago which kind of went under because of the whole big pharma system, but I think it's being brought back, and a lot more will come forward in the future years. So it's a very non-invasive whole treatment. And yeah, I'll just stop there. Yeah.
It's so exciting. It's so amazing to hear. And Mytrae, one thing that really comes up for me is the awareness that I think you masterfully not just tell us about, but live, that there's so much more out there than what we are aware of. And it gives me so much hope. It's my language. It's just amazing to hear. I can just hang on your lips and really enjoy this.
So, thank
The
you.
amount of knowledge, the amount of knowledge out there that has been lost, right? Because, like you said, ancient Egypt, and I think about the chanting, you know, even the monks in the early Christian church, they did all that chanting, and just so much of that is lost, and we're just starting to recover it and use it again. I mean, you said we need to ask, right? It's not going to just come to us. We need to ask for it, and like the seek and you will find, in so many different ways. My goodness, the sound and music, and even just the trauma itself, right? Finding healing within the trauma that you experienced, to realize it wasn't personal. You were a 6-year-old girl, right? It was part of what happened in the family, the culture, your gender, just not talking about important subjects that needed to be discussed before you send a 16-year-old girl off to America where there's freedom, right? It's just intertwined of all the things, the trauma that came out of that, but also an incredible amount of work you've done to help women heal in so many different ways through your story and the work that you do, like the empowerment that you've given women. It's truly a blessing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think when we heal, at least for me, that's been my experience. It's just a natural thing. Like so much is possible for us all, right?
So for our listeners, how can they open up to receive the more, the connection? I know there are so many ways and so many channels of that. What would your advice be for somebody who wants to?
Or just in general?
Both.
Well, reach out. If you're feeling alone, please reach out to someone, to anyone, a phone line, a hotline, whatever, a friend, whoever you think might understand. Reach out. never, please, never, don't be alone with it. There's always help. And if the first person doesn't feel helpful, try at least 5.
Mm.
You know, you might find someone you connect with, because that's really important too, to feel like you connect with the person you're needing help from. And that would be my first request, to really not feel like you need to be alone with anything. And then whatever help is possible, there are, you know, if there are financial constraints, there are free groups, online groups. There's a lot of online help that's available, and there's so much, of course, on YouTube and podcasts, free information. But there's nothing like being part of a community, or part of having that interaction with someone for yourself. So whatever is possible to reach out and to engage in that way. And that healing is possible. So much is truly, truly possible. That your dreams, your hopes, your desires are all there for a reason, waiting to be fulfilled and waiting to be realized. And yes, it does take time and it takes effort, but there's a lot of help out there, a lot of people willing to help. And so to reach out, and also to reach out to whatever is sacred to you, you know, to just ask. And the answer and the solutions and the response may not come in a way that you expect. And I think that's part of the mystery and the magic, that we may think it's going to look like this, but it will look completely different. And there's a grace for all of us waiting and available for all of us, and a love that's available for all of us, and that everyone deserves and needs. And it's such an individual journey, and I just really hope you, as a listener, will find your way. Just keep taking the next step and knock on doors.
And really opening ourselves up. Like Marina and I talk about this, that Hopenning is about hope coming when you do open up to whatever it is, your spirit guides or your sound or your hypnotherapy or whatever modality is a comfort for you, right? Just try, like you said, take one step, just take one step to ask, I need help. I need help. Whether it's I need help or it's I need help, to ask and to expect, right? I think part of it as well is to expect. Once you ask, expect that it's going to be given to you. And then embrace it, like you said, take the grace and claim that grace. So it's there's a universe of healing if we can open ourselves up to it.
Infinite possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So
Anyway.
our guest, I'm pretty sure, would love to read up more about you and to buy your book. So tell us how they can be in touch with you, how they can find out more about you, and where they can buy your book.
Okay, so I have 2 websites. The first is my name, mytraemeliana.com, and the other is templeofsoundhealing.com. I'm also on social media, so you can find me there. My book is Brown Skin Girl, and it's available on, you know, most retailers, including Amazon. Yeah, and so feel free. I'd love to hear from people who just want to connect or say hello or have read my book. Yeah, and if I can point you in a direction, I'm happy to do so.
And if we want to find out more about the sound healing, can we go on your website to find out information, maybe take a course? Do you have virtual courses that we can start any time of the year, or is it
I do. I have a a couple of sound healing courses that anybody can, one, learn about sound, and two is to learn how to play the bowls and all about the crystal singing bowls. So that's a virtual course. The one for practitioners is more, it's me. So there are more specific dates for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sounds fascinating.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, and I do have a monthly Divine Feminine Temple, which is a women's empowerment and spiritual group. We meet online for a couple of hours, and there's usually a theme, and we go through different practices, exercises, sharing. There's always a sound healing, of course, but it's just a place for women to come together and connect and be in a healing and empowered space.
That's amazing. Yeah. And we can all find all of that on the website.
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Mytrae, thank you so much for being such a blessing to us today and telling your story and giving us hope. It was just so amazing to listen to you, to learn from you. Really, thank you for being here.
Thank you both so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
And, you know, we talk about vibrations. I mean, we are thousands of kilometers apart. And yet I feel so peaceful. Like I just feel, right after speaking with you, I just feel this profound sense of calm, real calm, and just blessed. I feel really blessed actually right now, just to hear and you speak, and the ideas that you've given us, and your presence is just you've just got a really harmonious, calming presence. So I thank you for that too.
You just radiate that, and it's amazing to see it and feel it touching us. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. So kind. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you so much for creating such a beautiful space and opportunity for people to come together and learn and receive and hear from, about different forms of healing and receive hope. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
We're very blessed doing it. Thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today in episode 55. If you like what we do, please follow us and subscribe to us. We are on the group The Hopenning on Facebook, and you can subscribe at the bottom here. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.